Not only could you see into the Dutch house, you could see straight through it. The house was shortened in the middle, and the deep foyer led directly into what we call the observatory, which had a wall of windows facing the backyard. From the driveway, you could let your eye go up the front steps, across the terrace, through the front doors, across the long marble floor of the foyer, through the observatory, and catch sight of the lilacs waving obliviously in garden behind the house. Hey guys, I'm back again. I'm here to do my review of The Dutch House. So this is the first book that I read for the BookTube prize, and I was happy to read this one because it's been on my TBR. I have never read anything by Ann Patchett before. This is my first Ann Patchett book, and I was happy with it. I thought it was fairly interesting, and it deals with some interesting themes around family. So as you could hear from the passage I read at the beginning, we have a story that grows out of living in this particular house called the Dutch house. And the way the Dutch house is described, you have this idea that you can see through it, but you don't really get the details unless you're inside of it. And that seems to be a very good way of describing a family. We see a lot from the outside and we think we know what's really going on the inside, but we really don't unless we're actually there. So this book covers lots of themes: betrayal, responsibility, love, sacrifice, all the little themes that kind of go with stories that are about families. Now, the two main characters of this book are Danny and Maeve. Maeve is the older sister. I think she's about 7 years older than Danny. And as the story grows, which is the best thing that Ann Patchett does in this whole book, is that you see the growth of these characters. You see Maeve and Danny as children, and you see them grow into adults. And you see their personalities and their characters kind of change and develop and grow. And we see how Maeve takes on her responsibility to take care of her brother right from the beginning. Once her parents divorce, her mother is no longer there, and she becomes responsible in her own mind for her brother. Just as when the father remarries and brings Andrea home, that's not a spoiler because it's in the description, brings Andrea home, which is his new wife, along with her two young daughters, we see that there is a piss poor attempt to put a family together as a full unit. And I say piss poor because, one, the father does absolutely nothing to try to fuse his children with his new wife and her children. And secondly, his new wife is allowed to do whatever she wants to do. So she had no intention of bringing these two families together. She wanted her new husband's children out. So the moment that happened, when she could actually throw them out, she did. And from there, we see how the bond between Maeve and Danny becomes tighter and tighter. It becomes so close that it doesn't feel like sister-brother relationship. It feels more like mother-son. It's very peculiar how it's done, but it does feel like Maeve is some kind of second mother. Because when their mother leaves, Danny is only 4 years old. Okay, so he's a baby. Now, the whole idea around the Dutch house is this particularity because this is the only house in the town that looks like this, and it was owned or built by this Dutch origin family. called I think it's pronounced the Vanderbecks, and their father buys the house, and he decides to move in there with his wife and his kids. But the thing is, the house is very much over the standard of living of what their father and mother would have normally been living in. So the house is sort of like a center of attention, attraction in a kind of way in this town. And it just, as the story goes on, you see how it all kind of falls apart once Maeve and Danny have been thrown out. And so you have this idea of betrayal that comes to play because of being thrown out, but then you have other issues in the story that discuss this idea of betrayal. I don't want to get into that because I don't want to give away spoilers. But the best thing that Ann Patchett does in the book is her depiction of Maeve and Danny. Those character developments are done brilliantly throughout. However, all of the other characters, well, yeah, I want to say all the other characters in the book seem to be used to drive the story only. They don't feel like real characters. And I feel like that's where the book really falls down, because you really understand Maeve and Danny very well, but the other characters, they just feel like props to me to a certain extent. And that was a little disappointing, because I think she could have made some of the other characters more well-rounded so that we could actually believe that they were who they said they were. And that's one of the reasons why this book did not get 4 stars from me. I will leave, you'll see at the end when I do my overall book 2 review what I gave this book. But I'll tell you, it did not get 4 stars. However, I did enjoy the writing. I did enjoy finding out what was going to happen to Maeve and Danny. I wasn't too particular. For me, there was a problem with the pacing. Towards part 2, the middle of part 2, it starts to slump a bit. Part 2 is the biggest part of this book. There's actually 3 parts. And I don't know, there's a part where it just starts to really slump and to be a little less interesting. So the pacing could have been worked on a bit more. Would I recommend this? Now, I would recommend this to people who like Ann Patchett and who like reading literary fiction. I would say if you're not particular about reading literary fiction, I would say maybe give this one a miss. It's not that important that you got to get to it, okay? I'm sure some of Ann Patchett's other books are a lot better. I mean, I haven't read any of them, but people that I know that talk about reading Ann Patchett books always talk to me about Bel Canto being a fantastic read. So I would say it's probably not on the Bel Canto level, even though I haven't read it. So yeah, that's all I have to say about The Dutch House. No regrets. I love the cover. Now I understand it. I understand this beautiful cover. But yeah, so that's it. Link below. Tell me what you thought about The Dutch House. Did you love it? Are you an Ann Patchett fan? And if you are an Ann Patchett fan, tell me what I should read next from Ann Patchett. Should I just pick up Bel Canto? Is that the one that I should read next? Let me know below. That's all I have for you today. Bye.